So, 20th anniversary, tell us about that.
Well, we're sitting just a few yards from where the Jesuits, the 6 Jesuits, and 2 women were killed in November of 1989, and approaching the 20th anniversary of their deaths. And we want to send a message of greeting to our friends in the United States, and especially at the Jesuit colleges and universities in the States, who, along with us, will be commemorating this tragic act, but also this act that reminds us of generosity, reminds us of the cost of discipleship, that reminds us of the nobility, I think, too, of our vocation within higher education, to speak the truth in a time of lies and distortion. So we're expecting at the UCA thousands and thousands of people that we know are going to be coming, and they'll be coming not in a sense of mourning, but rather, and I think in a spirit of gratitude, and to renew their own commitment to try to make this world a better place, you know.
Surely people up there are going to want to know, at this moment of the anniversary, what's it like? You know, a little bit of analysis they call you into it. Or what's the situation today?
Yeah. Here we are, of course, 20 years after these events. And what would this be now? We're approaching, it will be 18 years since the end of the war. And I wish I could say El Salvador were a paradise, or were a just society, or that the dream of our martyrs, many of our martyrs, like Monsignor Romero and others, had been realized. But we're living very hard times, so we have to be honest about that. In many ways, El Salvador is an average country in the world, you know. We have an index of poverty that's officially over 40%, but in reality is probably 2/3 of the population or more. And probably half of those people don't meet their basic needs. Half of those 2/3, so almost 1/3 or more of the population. As we experience now the effects of the global economic crisis on top of our permanent crisis and the earlier crisis of food prices and fuel prices, so that I have people coming into my office asking if I could help them get a job, lots of unemployment. Elsa and her mom coming in the other day and telling me about how they were skinnier than they used to be, and they're not sure whether it's because they're not eating as much or because of the stress that they experience. The lack of a coherent economic plan, the lack of resources, and the political party that was in power for 20 years after 1989 had generated a social situation which excluded from participation the majority of the population. And the effect of that on young people was especially cruel. Young people were left with very little opportunity for education or for jobs. Many of them migrated to the United States, and they continue to do so. Others drop out and enter into gangs and into engage in other forms of crime and robbery that have made El Salvador an insecure place for many families. At the same time, a permanent crisis like this can sometimes not only bring out the worst in people, but also the best. And I continue to be amazed by the great generosity of so many people, including poor people and people in the church, people here at the UCA, who respond with creativity, with generosity. And I think inspired by not only one another, but also by the memory of people like Romero, the martyrs at the UCA, and so many others whom they symbolize. And you know, we're very strong and insist, you know, here in El Salvador on commemorating these people, we feel we have to keep reminding ourselves of that generosity and how we have to live also, you know, up to our own vocations, you know, wherever we find ourselves, you know, whether it's in the university or in a parish or in, you know, working to raise a family. Politically speaking, we have just experienced an earthquake. For the first time, really ever in El Salvador, a party of the left has come to power. It's the party of the former guerrillas here, the FMLN. And they selected as their candidate a moderate figure who has many characteristics that I think have also been favorable to President Obama in the United States. An eloquent speaker, a very, you know, a first-rate mind, and an ability to negotiate incredible conflicts and convoke people with a sense of national unity. And so far, now several months into his administration, although we feel the tremendous effects of the economic paralysis, there has been hope and there's been important moves toward consolidating a state of law in El Salvador, a culture of democracy. Inroads have been made against corruption, and these are promising. You can't eat any of that. It won't generate jobs, but it should create a climate where maybe some economic alternatives on the local level can prosper, and where civil society can feel, people can feel, organizations can feel that they are able to push forward with a social agenda. We're hoping that this will keep people from migrating, that it will enable the government to increase social spending, which is abysmal. Hospitals, public hospitals look like something from the 19th century. People die for lack of medicines, die for lack of attention. Public spending, miserable. The average number of school years completed in the country has now reached 6. El Salvador is the country which spends the lowest as a percentage of its gross national product on education of any country in Latin America. This has to be overcome. It's a priority for the government. And yet it will be difficult during this time. But there is a sense of hope. The church has also been generally positively disposed toward this government, and I think has, although there are exceptions, has not fallen into the trap, you know, of criticizing this government irresponsibly, and that's good. And there is a sense of movement forward in the midst of this crisis. So it's a time of hope, and we are hoping that that at least at the level of some of these communities, and we expect. Here's another thing too that I should mention. While the right wing, a very intransigent right wing, controls the National Assembly, the executive, which is more forward-looking, has the ability to do some reform of the police system and the justice system, and we have seen some advances in that. And I think we will see more. Maybe it's a good thing in this context to mention something about the church, situation of the church. Everybody in El Salvador believes in God. I must say, sometimes I wonder what God people believe in, but everybody says they believe in God. We just did a very important survey here with the help of Canisius College of religion in El Salvador. The Catholic Church is just barely the majority in El Salvador now. There have been